Hello, we're back with another video and with a brand new recording setup. And today we are going to build my ultimate Windows 98 gaming PC. Windows 98 was the very first operating system I ever used, and recently I've been having an urge to go back and experience it all over again, which is why I decided to build a Windows 98 computer from scratch. Another reason why is even though I have my Windows XP gaming PC, which will play almost any old game under the sun, there are some games from the 90s that, for some odd reason, I just cannot get to run properly on Windows XP. So it just makes more sense to have a dedicated Windows 98 computer for those kinds of use cases. And while yes, I could just set up a virtual machine running Windows 98 and have the exact same experience, but there's just something about having real physical hardware that just offers a more authentic experience. So let's go over the parts that I'm going to be using for this build. So for optical and floppy drives, we have an HL data storage CDRW drive. I want to say it's a 48 speed drive. It's not the fastest or even the best optical drive I could go with. I do want to go with a DVD-RW drive, but you know, I don't have any spare DVD drives on hand, so a CDRW drive will be good enough for now. And then we have a pretty standard looking Mitsumi branded floppy drive. I don't have a whole lot of software that's on floppy disks, but it's still nice to have when I actually need it. For a hard drive, I was originally going to go with this Western Digital 20GB hard drive, but it is very noisy and quite annoying. So instead, we're going to go with this Western Digital 40GB hard drive, which is a lot quieter, and plus it has more storage capacity. It does have a SATA connection, but I did buy a SATA to IDE adapter, which should hopefully work. For CPU, we're going with an AMD Athlon XP. I'm not entirely sure on the clock speed or what model is. I want to say it's a 2600 plus. And I believe it's clocked at 1.6 or 1.7 gigahertz. I originally thought about going with an Intel Pentium 3 or a Pentium 4, but Pentium 3 boards are a little expensive nowadays, and don't even get me started on Pentium 4s. Those things run very, very hot, which is why I decided to go with an Athlon XP because it runs a lot cooler than a Pentium 4, and it offers some pretty good performance. For a CPU cooler, we're going with this Cooler Master AMD cooler. This is just a spare that I had lying around and it works, so it'll be good enough. For the motherboard, we're going with a Gigabyte socket 462 board, model GA-7VM400M. I decided to go with this specific board because it is pretty cheap, it offers Windows 98 support, and it has an AGP slot, which was a requirement for my Windows XP gaming PC. Plus, it's got a pretty decent selection of ports. For memory, we're going with 256 megabytes of DDR400 RAM. I originally thought about going with 512 megabytes, which I believe is the maximum amount of RAM that Windows 98 supports. But, you know, 256 megabytes will be good enough for now. For a sound card, we're going with this specific sound card. To be honest, I have no idea what the branding is on the sound card. It does have a Creative Labs chip, which leads me to believe that it's some sort of sound blaster. To be honest, I don't even know if it even works either. It's been in my parts bin for years now, and I have never tested it before. But, you know, it never hurts to see if it even works. And besides, I don't really know how good the integrated audio on the motherboard is, so never hurts to try. And, you know, if it doesn't work, no big deal. For a graphics card, we're using a PNY GeForce FX 6200 AGP graphics card. It's definitely not the most ideal or even the best graphics card that you could use for Windows 98 because the GeForce FX series is pretty polarizing by nVidia fans, but you know, it's got 128 megabytes of video memory and it's got some pretty good features. And you know, when it comes to DirectX 7 and DirectX 8 games, it does a pretty good job. So, like I said before, even though it's not the best graphics card I could go with, it'll be good enough. Plus, it offers a fanless design, which means it doesn't make any noise whatsoever, which is definitely a plus. And everything will be powered by this HiPro 300 watt power supply. It's a good enough power supply. It's pretty reliable. It hasn't died on me yet. It's just one that I had lying around and it'll work. Hopefully 300 watts should be plenty of power. And finally, for the computer case, we're going with the Dell Inspiron 546 case. This originally belonged to my parents' old computer back in like 2010, but the motherboard died in it years ago, so I've had the empty case ever since. It is most definitely not period correct for Windows 98, but it's an empty case that I had lying around, and honestly, I didn't really feel like ordering another case, so it'll work. Can't forget my trusty old anti-static wrist strap, of course. Okay, let's get to building then. Wow, that is the easiest I/O shield I've ever installed. That was really easy. Well, unfortunately, it seems like we've ran into two small issues. Number one, this power cable will not fit in the motherboard power as it has too many pins. So hopefully I have another power supply lying around that has the right amount of pins. And number two, the cable for the case cooling fan is too short to reach the fan connector way over here. So hopefully I'll be able to find a fan that has a longer cable. Alright, luckily I was able to find an extra power supply that has the correct power cabling lying around. It's a BezTech power supply. It's a little older than the one that I had in here originally, but it's still 300 watts and it should still work perfectly fine. And luckily I was able to find an extra fan that had a longer cable, so that's good. Anyways, let's finish up with all the cabling. And we're done. Cable management is not the prettiest, but hey, this is my ultimate Windows 98 gaming PC. If I want it to look like a rat's nest, then it's my choice. And besides, it'll work perfectly fine. Oh wait, I just forgot one last step. We need a BIOS battery. That would probably be important to have. There. Now we're done. Alright, moment of truth. Assuming that I plugged in everything correctly, when I plug in the computer and press the power button, oh, if my monitor doesn't actually fall asleep, come on now. Hello? There we go. Anyways, like I was saying, once we press the power button, the system should roar to life. Here we go. Hey! Cool! It works! Well, that answers our question. The system booted up perfectly fine, so we plugged in everything correctly, so that's good. Alright, so let's take a look at the BIOS here. So it looks like it's a pretty standard looking BIOS for whenever this board came out. I'm assuming 2003 by the BIOS date here. So Cmos Settings, of course, it's got the wrong date and time because this board hasn't had a Cmos battery in it for God knows how long, and we just put one in. The only thing that is a little concerning is the IDE primary and secondary settings. Nothing is coming up. I'm really hoping the IDE controller on this board isn't dead. My guess is we probably just have something connected in the wrong place. So I'll have to go back and fix that later. Advanced BIOS settings, first boot device, floppy drive, second boot device, HDD, third boot device, CD-ROM. Let's actually set that as hard drive, and then we'll set the CD-ROM as the second boot device. Integrated peripherals, USB 1.1 controller, USB 2, USB keyboard support. We actually want that enabled, as well as USB mouse support, because that would definitely be nice to have. Frequency and voltage control? Huh. What is this? Increased AGP voltage may get stable for overclock, but it may damage the AGP card when enabled for this feature. Huh. That must mean that this board supports overvolting and possibly overclocking. That's pretty cool. Probably won't ever use it, but still, that's pretty cool. Alright, let's make sure that our settings can get saved to the Cmos. Hopefully they should. It's a brand new battery. I don't see why it wouldn't. So let's see if it gets through the power on self-test. It's probably not going to get very far because it's not detecting any of our drives for some unknown reason. Because yeah, I can't even eject the CD drive, so there must be something misconfigured somewhere. But I'll look into that before we decide to install Windows. But hey, at least the system power's on, so that's the most important thing. Alright, so I did some reconfiguring, and it turns out I had the IDE cables all mixed up, which was preventing the system from detecting any of our drives. But luckily, I swapped them around. It seems to be detecting everything perfectly fine, so let's go. We got our Windows 98 startup disk, which is required to actually install Windows 98 because it does not have the ability to boot off of a CD. unfortunately. That's just the way it is. And I have my totally legit copy of Windows 98 SE that we're going to be installing on the system. So, let's go. Excuse me, what? Okay, I'm pretty sure I put in the right floppy disk. Yeah, it says Windows 98 startup disk. That's the right one. That's weird. So either the floppy drive itself doesn't work, or somehow my Windows 98 startup disk is corrupt. I'm hoping it's the latter, because that's an easier problem to fix, because I don't actually have any spare floppy drives around. So let me try making another floppy disk and try this again. Okay, it's making some different noises now. Hey, there we go. So yeah, it must have the data that was originally on there just must have been corrupted, so that's good. So let's put in our Windows 98 CD. And start Windows 98 setup from CD-ROM. Welcome to Setup. The setup program prepares Windows 98 to run on your PC. Press Enter to continue. Setup has found non-MS-DOS operating system files on your computer. Yeah, because this hard drive version ran Windows XP, and we don't want that, so remove the files. And to remove the non-MS-DOS partition, Setup will delete all files on your first hard drive and configure the disk for use with Windows. Yes, that's fine. All files on this disk will be deleted. To configure your hard disk now, press Y. And yes, we do want to enable large disk support, because if we do not, then Windows 98 is going to create a pretty tiny partition, and we do not want that. We want to use the entire 40 gig hard drive. This may take a while because it has to format the entire drive, so I'm going to skip past this part. Welcome to Windows 98 Setup. Congratulations on choosing Windows... Welcome to Windows 98 Setup. Congratulations on choosing Windows 98. Well, thank you. I'm probably not going to show off the entire Windows 98 setup, because that's going to take way too long. As you can tell by the estimated time right here, the setup process is going to take quite a while, so I'm not going to make you guys sit through all that. Ain't nobody got time for that. I'm hoping the fan speed kicks down once we install drivers for the motherboard, because this system is actually kind of noisy and it's a little annoying. Alright, let's set up time zone here, which we are in Central Time, US and Canada. Apply. Okay. I don't know why, but I just love that little drum animation. Type a name to identify yourself to Windows. We'll give it a username, but we probably won't put a password in here. Perfect. Aw, we didn't get the startup sound. Probably because we don't actually have any sound drivers. Oh well. But yeah, looks like we are in Windows 98. Everything's all installed and we're ready to go. Well, besides drivers, of course. Luckily, my graphics card, the GeForce FX 5200, or no, not 5200, the 6200, it did come with the original driver disk, which is definitely nice. Gigabyte does still have their drivers for Windows 98 on their website for the motherboard. The only thing that I'm worried about is trying to find drivers for that sound card, but if we can't find any, it's no big deal. We'll just use the integrated audio. So I'll install the needed drivers and I'll get back to you once we have everything all up and running. Alright, we finally got everything all up and running and everything installed. Well, mostly. There's one big problem we have with the system. Everything is working completely fine except the sound card. That sound card that I put in there, it turns out it's what's called a creative Ensoniq AudioPCI 5200. It's a pretty low-end sound card from around like 1997 or 1998. It doesn't have integrated MIDI support, so basically you have to install separate MIDI files to actually get MIDI support, which is kind of it kind of sucks, but it is what it is. That's not the main problem though. Main problem is we have the sound drivers installed, but yeah, there is no sound whatsoever. And the computer is connected to a sound device, and I'm using a pretty high quality audio cable too, so that can't be the issue. I have literally spent the last 4 weeks diagnosing this frickin' issue. I have no idea what's going on. I have tried everything. I've tried using different audio cables, I've tried using different sound output devices, I've even tried installing a different operating system like Windows XP, and it still does not work. Hell, I've even tried reinstalling Windows 98 like a good 4 or 5 times, and even going as far as ordering another sound card, and nothing seems to fix the issue. So it's got to be some sort of weird driver issue that I'm unaware of. And I did use the drivers that Creative's website did have for the sound card, and nothing is working. I have no idea. If any of you guys have any idea what it could be, please let me know. Because, yeah, like I said before, everything else works on this computer except the audio, and that's kind of important to have. And I know what you're thinking. Well, just use the integrated audio that's built into the motherboard. Well, I would do that, but every single audio driver that I tried to find for this Gigabyte motherboard, even on Gigabyte's main website, does not work whatsoever. So I have no idea what's going on with that issue either. Unless I can find different audio drivers for the Ensoniq AudioPCI sound card, really my only option is to go with a different kind of sound card entirely. So yeah, my original plans of showing off actual games on this PC is no longer happening. But on the bright side, what I can do instead is I can actually show off some 3D benchmarks. That way you get kind of an idea of what this system is capable of. It's better than nothing. So let's start off with 3D Mark 99 Max, which honestly with that nVidia GeForce 6200 in there should be absolutely no problem to run whatsoever. So we'll run all the tests. I probably won't show off the entire benchmark just because that'd be too much footage to edit through. So I'll show you just a little bit and then show you the scores afterwards. Oh yeah, just as I suspected. This is absolutely no problem for this PC. Oh yeah. God, that looks really good even for 1999. Whoa. That looks so trippy. So final score for 3D Mark 99 Max was 7455 for 3D Marks and 34,202 for CPU 3D Marks. Yeah, that's pretty good. Let's turn things up a notch with 3D Mark 2000, which pushes the system a little more than 99 did. But honestly, it's still holding up really, really well. I would love to have this as like a screensaver or something. That'd be so cool. Final score of 3D Mark 2000 was 8,348. That's pretty good. Honestly, actually, was that higher than we got with 3D Mark 99? I think it was. That's impressive. Moving on to 3D Mark 2001, and this is where the system starts to struggle a little bit, but honestly, it's still pretty good for what it is. Granted, I have everything turned up to the max, including anti-aliasing, so that might have something to do with the subpar performance. But if it wasn't for that, I think the system would be performing a little better. Oh, this one's my favorite. Fun fact about this specific benchmark, it actually uses the exact same graphical technology that was used in the first Max Payne game, which was a very, very impressive game for its time. Oh! Well, performance in this graphics test is not the greatest. Oh god, that frame rate it makes me nauseous. Okay, source score is a lot lower in 3D Mark 2001. We only got 2,101. Still, it's overall pretty decent performance for DirectX 8. We would just need to decrease some graphical settings to get better performance. Alright, let's really push this thing to its limits. So right now we're running Aquamark 2003 with 1024x768 and maximum detail settings. And when it comes to DirectX 9, this is where the GeForce FX series starts to choke a little bit. DirectX 9 games run okay on that series of graphics cards, but you could do a lot better, that's for sure. But honestly, if you turn down some graphics settings for DirectX 9 content, honestly, it does a pretty okay job. Oh wow, that's really laggy. 5 FPS. Yeah, this benchmark really pushes the system to its limits. Actually, quite frankly, beyond its limits in some cases. Alright, so for Aquamark 3, we got a total score of 22,472. So honestly, not too bad. It could definitely be better with lower graphics settings, but honestly, the fact that it was able to run very high settings for DirectX 9 at all is impressive on its own. Ooh, that's rough. Yeah, needless to say, Code Creature's benchmark is a no-go for the system. That is not good. I only turned up anti-aliasing to 2x, and I don't know if that's the reason why it's affecting the performance so bad, but yeah, that's rough. I think with a lower resolution it would do pretty okay, but at the resolution that we're running right now, that's nearly unplayable. Average frames per second 12 and maximum number of frames 17. Yeah, ouch. Not great. So that kind of gave you an idea of what my ultimate Windows 98 gaming PC can actually do. But we're not done yet. I saved the best for last. The true test for any Windows 98 gaming PC. One that can either make or break a system. Can my ultimate Windows 98 gaming PC run the 3D Maze screensaver? Let's find out. And survey says, yes it can. I'm not gonna lie, this was like a very, very tiny reason why I wanted to build this Windows 98 computer, just because I missed this screensaver so much. Oh, I would spend literally hours just watching this screensaver when I was little. So nostalgic. Well, minus the frustrating sound card issues, overall I'm pretty happy with this system. It runs Windows 98 really well, and honestly it'll play almost any game from 1995 till about 2002, 2003. And that's the most important thing. So, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Unfortunately, you don't get to hear the fantastic Windows 98 shutdown sound, but I'll make sure to put it in post-processing. Can't forget the anti-static wrist strap. No siree, we don't want to screw things up with static electricity. No. Oh.